Okay. All right, let's get started. We're going to talk about the golf carts again today. Glenn, did you get things
The
situated?
only thing that I was asked, and I'm pretty sure, and I'm good if we can, and I'm good with everything, but did we find out if any more information about allowing people who voluntarily give up their license to allow them to still be able to drive if they could get their license back? That was the only question I know, and I know there's 3 people in Port Wentworth that I've understand that have voluntarily gave up their license for purposes not because law enforcement forced them to, but because they did for their own personal reasons. So it does not affect their eyesight. So I was, and then I knew I saw a someone that sent me a text, which was basically saying that we possibly could do that, and I was just under the impression that we would have that taken care of, hopefully. And I'm good with everything else, but hopefully we're gonna be allowed to maybe, and we're on our city streets, and we're allowed to do certain things on city streets. If we can, I don't know if we wanna call it grandfathered in, or whether we want to, I don't know. I just think there's circumstances up and beyond that supersedes maybe the 1% of the 99% of people who we were required to have driver's license. If we could either figure out some way circumstantial, whether the chief and the city manager and the city attorney, that we could find some way, somehow, a special permit to allow these individuals who could have a driver's license but decide not to have a driver's license to still be able to operate a golf cart that drives less than 20 miles an hour as a low-speed vehicle.
I got.
Mayor, may I say something? Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I did some research into this, and I sent Mr. Jones and the lawyer some paperwork about the state of Georgia, elderly people driving golf carts. I don't know if they got it or not. I assume they did.
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm not against, this is mostly to stop these young people from driving that doesn't have a
Is this
license at
Linwood?
all. But I do want, I'm
This is
concerned
Linwood.
about one thing. When someone gives up their license, and that's fine, but if they're having problems seeing, and they're having some, I mean, with age comes problems.
Right.
Mechanical problems, sight problems, hearing problems. So, I reckon my biggest concern is the city gonna take on that liability if you give a permit to somebody that gave up their license, but they gave it up because they can't see? What I'm saying is, how do we draw that line?
And Herschel, I totally agree. I would be the first one to step in and say that, and I think anyone else would too. But in one particular circumstance, and we don't have to call names, but one particular circumstance, we know that this one individual voluntarily, and I don't think they mind me saying so, but it was definitely not because of their eyesight. It was for other personal reasons. And I could share that, maybe offline if someone would really want to know, but I do know that for sure, and I've been assured by their family that was the reason. It's not their eyesight, but they did volunteer, and then I'm understanding there's another person who lives there in the downtown area that I do not personally know. So I think that's what I was asking, if there's any way that we can look at that, if we had special circumstances, or naturally, without a doubt, I'd want the city manager and the attorney and the city and the police chief to be a part of this, to whether he or she would have to go through special parameters associated with what we come up with to prove that that's why he did or she did because I'm sure there's other circumstances out there that people don't have a driver's license. And if we're talking about operating a vehicle that's going to travel less than 20 miles an hour,
Right.
that was my concern. And be quite honestly, that's the only.
I totally agree with that, but I reckon that it comes down to the lawyer, the chief of police saying, this is what they need to say this individual has the right hearing and eyes, and I don't, and to be able to drive this, and that would be pretty much the experts. I leave that to the chief and the Jimmy to say, this is what they have to produce to the city to get this special permit. I'm all in agreement with you. I'm just saying that that someone comes up there and they gave up their license, but if they having problems seeing, now if it can be corrected and all, it's like anybody else, there's no problem. But this person that comes up there, if they're having problems to ensure the city's liability, I would say they have to produce something, and I would throw that back at the chief and the Jimmy to say what they would have to produce, but they'd have to go to their personal doctor and have a paper, a letter signed by their personal doctor saying that their eyesight is whatever would correct the lenses, and they are. I know the city. I mean, for a driver's license, you have to take a little quick eye test, and you have to correct it. It's on your license. You have to wear glasses. So that was the only thing I'm all for it. But again, it was mostly to keep these kids off, not to hinder any elderly person from doing if they are physically and mentally capable to handle that. Right. That's all
Is-
I have to say.
I'd like to say two small things. Is there like this might be for the chief, is there like an age in the state of Georgia that you have to be able to have a driver's license? It's like an age, like, I don't know, 17, 16, 19, 20?
A Class D license or operator license for somebody 16 is when you can apply for it and get it. And at 15 years old, you can get a learner's permit.
Okay. So at 16, we're saying as a city that if you got a driver's license, you could drive a golf cart. Well, that's how it should be for all of it. It should be blanketed. If you got a driver's license, you could drive a golf cart. I understand that some people want to give up their license, but if they can't see, I don't think the city should be held to that liability standard. It might be because they're a drunk driver and don't make good decisions to give up their license. But if you got a license, you should be allowed to drive a golf cart. My only concern about this speeding thing is, as far as a seatbelt, we should give them the option that you could have either a seatbelt or the side restraint, because the law is kind of watered down a little bit. What is really a seat restraint? Is it a seat belt that goes on your waist? Is it a seat belt that comes up from the top? Is it a side? So we should give them an option. If you got a golf cart that has a seat belt, or if it has a side restraint, as long as there's something that keeps you in that golf cart. Right. So when the police is enforcing it, they could check and say, hey, do you have a seat belt or do you have a side restraint? Either or, we should at least allow them that option on a golf cart, because all golf cart companies don't make the same golf cart restraints the same. When you say the word restraints, it could be anything.
Well, dealing with the hip restraint issue first, I've done some additional research, and what it appears is that in approximately 2005, 2006, the Federal Highway Administration developed regulations regarding hip restraints and lap belt restraints and what have you with motor vehicles. And these types of vehicles are within that framework of the Federal Highway Administration regulations. It's not a defined thing of what a hip restraint is, but it appears that somewhere 05, 06 area, that's when these golf carts began having to have seat belts, woven seat belts. So they're the newer carts. The older ones that I'm most familiar with have a black hip restraint kind of hand
On the sides, yeah.
on either
I've seen
side.
those.
And that is sufficient, in my understanding, to be considered a hip restraint.
Yeah.
Now, if there are older carts than that have nothing except just flat seats
Yeah.
that you can move laterally, slide
They shouldn't be
laterally.
allowed to permit.
That would require, I think, a seat belt or some type of restraint being added to the cart.
Yeah.
We're adding a lot to it, which is fine. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard Code is what you're referring to, 213 through 218 outline all federal requirements. Seatbelts have now become mandatory in this country until 1963. Every vehicle before that, even to this day, is exempt. We cannot write a seatbelt ticket for that. You can do what you would want to for the hip restraint or seatbelt. That is strictly up to council. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The only concern that I've got is on this licensing issue. We are not a licensing board. We cannot do it. You know, anybody can go to a doctor, a doc in a box, and get a letter. My suggestion would be to stick with the requirements of the state of Georgia for licensing of individuals.
Exactly.
And
If they
that,
want to go back and get their license and they're able to pass the requirements, then they could drive the golf cart.
that's the point that I wanted to make as far as this ordinance, proposed ordinance that's been drafted. Nothing here is out of thin air. It's all been pulled down out of the Georgia code and simply recreated on this ordinance.
Correct.
So in order to modify it, the licensing requirements, you're gonna have to say, well, I gotta change Georgia law in some respect. And I don't think we can do that.
But I think you're looking at an added expense to the city, more issues for city employees. You're opening up a big box there, and we're subjecting the city to liability issues as well as,
It is.
well, they gave Billy a special waiver, why can't I have one? And we just don't need to get it.
Yeah.
Is my opinion.
I tend to agree, and I would urge those people who will find themselves in that situation where they have given up their right to drive or somebody, nothing prevents them from, riding in the cart with someone who is a licensed driver.
I mean, I appreciate all these comments, and I really do, because, I trust in both of y'all. Y'all know how much, so that's unprecedented there. But I will tell you that I will, and I am looking, and I've just not received back the emails because I've been talking to other cities, and I agree with Chief Libby. Look, I'm the first one to say, because there ain't nobody in this town that's more supportive of public safety than I am, and that's very well documented. But I just think, and I still have a couple of weeks to bring it back to council, and as soon as I do get information one way or another, I'll sure allow Chief Libby and the city attorney to know.
I'm willing to listen to
Because I just think that, and I do know, without publicly stating this person's business, and I will off the record to someone offline to allow them to know that why. And I think part of it is, and I agree with Councilman Hodges, that if this person could not see, that'd be one thing. And that's one of the things I'm looking for. Does he need now we're talking about driving on city ordinance streets. We're not talking about a highway. So we're not talking highways. We're talking about city ordinance streets. The ordinances maintained by the city. If he could prove positive that, especially when we're talking about these, what do we call them, the low mileage vehicles, what do y'all call them, LSVs? LSVs, vehicles. I don't know. I'll just have to leave it at that until we get to council. So I got one other point, and I'll be finished, Mr. Mayor. There was a question. A person called me, and I understand very much so about the ATVs that we can't run them because I've been on them ATVs up in the farms, and I know them things go 50 and 60 miles an hour. And I'm very much supportive of Chief Libby and the attorney on that, leaving the ATVs off. But I had a question, and did not bring my packet, and I had it written down, and I don't know the difference between an ATV, RTV, or whatever, but this particular person who owns a business here in Port Wentworth had called me, and her question was, she was going to buy a golf cart with all the bells and whistles, and she realized how much it was costing, and he said, here, I can sell you this, and I'm just throwing it out there now to anybody. Is it an RTV?
It depends on the type, sir.
right, that it only,
Basically, you're talking about a side-by-side.
right, it only
We're
drives.
dictated by Georgia law when that happens.
Well, she was telling me that it only goes 20 miles an hour, and it had everything equipped like we're requiring our golf carts. And she said that she would even bring it over there to, of course, she called your first name, but she said I'll bring it over to the police station, let Chief Libby to check it out, because her words, she was told that she was good. She talked to someone, and look here, we all know that everybody says, oh, I talked to someone at the police station, I talked to someone at the city hall, I talked to someone, and he can't ever produce that someone's name. So to me, that's like you didn't talk to him. But she supposedly said someone told her she was all right as long as she had a vehicle that only went 20 miles an hour like a golf cart. So I would just throw that out there, and I would find that out, and Matt, I can talk to you about that to see if that is legal.
Familiar, Your Honor.
Yeah, okay. So if you're very familiar, if we're on the same page with that, is that legal or not?
It is not legal as the law
not
is
legal.
currently written.
Okay, but I'm good with that. That's
So
just,
The state of Georgia actually starts registering low-speed vehicles
Uh-huh.
like they do in South Carolina. The city is again opening up another issue that could come back to court.
hey, I'm good with that, because I do know the mayor has had to contact several people who had ATVs, and they ended up having to sell them, now since they've driving golf carts. But I was just throwing that out there because I didn't understand the difference of all of these VVVs, and I was just wondering if that fell into the category of an LSV, which was a low-speed vehicle.
I can give you the definition here. The umbrella, I guess, is a personal transportation vehicle. And that consists of either a motorized cart, the golf cart has to be up to 1,300 pounds or less, and which can operate no more than 20 miles an hour, I believe it is. And the low-speed vehicle, as I understand it, is a four-wheel electric vehicle which can go from no greater than 25 miles an hour. Which I kind of envision as these multi-seat limo vehicle or golf carts that run around hotels and golf courses and things like that. That's what I consider to be a low-speed vehicle. Golf carts are different than that. Golf carts are generally four-seaters. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about with the RTV.
We're talking about side-by-side ATVs that are made to use on farms and.
All-terrain vehicles, no.
Well, see, I didn't even know what it was, so she just called and asked me, but apparently Chief Libby knows all about it, so I'm good. Hey, I'm gonna trust in what he says. I was just bringing it up because she was categorizing as a LSV, you know, it only ran 20 miles an hour. That's,
A question though on Georgia law. Georgia law, you can add to Georgia law, but you can't take away from Georgia law.
right.
So
exactly.
you run amok of trying to do something less, even if it is on a city street, because Georgia law clearly defines what's required. So I think we have a real issue, and we simply need to stay away from that dog, or it'll come back and haunt us.
Oh, look, again, I'm perfectly understandable exactly what all that is, and I'm just trying to find, let's say after so many years, trying to find that loophole. And if there is a loophole, I'll find it or try my best. And then if there's not a loophole, I'll go to that family and say that loophole don't exist. And I am perfectly good with everything else is in this packet as far as it comes, because it's probably a long time coming, upgraded from what Chief Libby and I did years ago, or back in the day before he was even chief. So
Let me add one more issue here that we had discussed before, and that's the viaduct. You know, I had some more conversations with DOT, and they indicate that although the viaduct, the west side or the whatever it is, the off-river side, was designed for for golf carts to be able to traverse. If the city wanted to open up the other side, they would have no heartburn about it, provided that it is at least 6 feet wide. Now, I haven't taken a measurement to know whether that sidewalk on the riverside of the viaduct is 6 feet wide or not.
I think they're exactly the same myself, but I hadn't measured them.
I do too.
Well, the design called for the other side to be, a foot or two wider from the curb over to.
They look exactly
end.
the same to me.
Yeah, I know the golf
We'll
cart,
get a measurement.
I know it'll go across both sides, because I've been across both sides, but that's,
And that's why I was gonna
But-
bring up that
That being
question you
said-
had before
Yeah.
about, meeting somebody at the top of the viaduct. If you just flow with traffic, you won't have that issue.
Well, if someone can measure that Riverside,
We get
if it's 6 feet or more, DOT is okay with it, and I can change the
yeah,
ordinance.
we can do that. And, one last simple question, before we can move on to whatever else we need to do. The question was, been popping up to me the last couple of weeks. We're starting this January the 1st, but are we going to, is it going to be like like 2 weeks where because everybody ain't going to pop up January the 2nd. Are we going to do this for like 2 weeks, or maybe,
A phase in.
phasing in process where we get them to come in? Because we don't want January the 5th, someone be riding along and them not know. And then I guess my last question would be, how are we going to get the word out? Now most of the people in my area, they pretty much know, because I've been letting them know. But I know that you would have maybe some people in your area that may have it,
I think it was suggested the water bill.
yeah, but we also say no one reads the water bill, unfortunately, but,
Send it out to our Miami, our Eli.
all right.
All right, we just go ahead.
I think we were having some general conversations, as I recall, about effective January the 1st, but enforced February the 1st.
That's what I was gonna give them the whole month of January.
Give
Yeah.
them an opportunity.
Right.
And a verbal if someone would.
Yeah, that would be
actually
great.
Well, and a lot of that too, sir, would be that we would, mainly, we're going for education.
Right, exactly. And I know,
We'll explain to them like you need to go get this registered at the police department.
yeah, I know you would
Go
do
to the
that.
Website, and this is the information that'll tell you how to do it with the application.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. So that's it for me.
Paul-
That would be the schedule. That would give them 30 days to make sure that
Sure.
they're
It's gonna give us
prepared.
time to make sure we have the proper
Right.
stickers and documents that we would issue out.
And I think everybody's gonna be on board with this.
Oh, yeah.
It's for the safety of these kids that are driving them, and the parents have got to understand, they just can't let these kids go on a cart and go. It's not gonna work anymore. There's too many kids getting hurt around our area, and we just gonna make sure it doesn't happen here.
And no more capacity than the cart is designed for. In other words, four
Yeah.
people, four-seater.
If it was designed for 4
Period.
people, that means 4 people.
Not
That doesn't
12.
mean 6 hanging off the side.
And I saw 6 on a cart yesterday.
I'm good.
All right, anybody else got any questions?
Okay. Well, if you can make those measurements,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll-
have somebody.
Chris will get those for us, and we'll know exactly what they are.
Mr. Hodges, do you have any questions?
I would like to go back to that, bylaw, that question that the counselor was talking about. Now, you're saying DOT said we could go on both sides if it was wide enough?
DOT has indicated that although the off-river side was designed for golf carts intentionally, if the riverside is at least 6 feet wide, they don't care. You can travel on both sides of the viaduct.
Yeah, so if we go with the flow of traffic, in other words.
Correct.
Right, you just follow the flow.
They just want to make sure that it is wide enough for the ordinary golf cart to get over without hanging a wheel on a curb and suddenly finding yourself out in the middle of Highway 25.
So, Chief Libby, you could see if that worked? I mean, that's a public safety thing.
Well, we'll go with the measurements, because the standard size of that golf cart is
Yes, sir.
gonna be the dictating factor to it. And of course, you couldn't have side-by-sides on that because they are too wide. So,
Sure, sure.
we would deal with that like we would any other traffic enforcement issue, sir.
Chris can make that measurement after the first part of this meeting is through and call us back and give it to us.
Right, yeah, so that, we'll have that information before we,
In today.
Yes.
okay, that was what I want to know, if we'd have that information by then. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Lee, you got anything? All right, this meeting is adjourned. We need to go into our closed session.
Sir.